In this video, I want to talk about how to approach a king. And really, we're taking a look at this because we want to understand how to approach our king, how to approach the King of Kings. So in the book of Esther, there was a man named Haman who was an official in the court of the Persian king Ahasuerus, or sometimes he's referred to as Xerxes. And Haman was given the signet ring of King Ahasuerus in order to issue a decree that he had really manipulated the king into believing that this was necessary. And so the king gave his signet ring to Haman, and Haman issued a decree to annihilate, to have all of the Jews killed. And he issued this decree largely because he was angry with a man named Mordecai, which was Esther's cousin. And Mordecai was very close to Esther. He had actually raised Esther because her parents had died, so he was a little older than Esther. And Esther, of course, is married to King Ahasuerus. She's the queen. And Ahasuerus is unaware that Esther is Jewish and does not know who Mordecai is at this point. And he also doesn't know that Haman has issued this decree. And in Persian law, once there's been a decree issued, it can't be revoked. Once a decree has been issued with the king's signet ring, it cannot be revoked. So they would have to figure out, and did have to figure out, how to issue another decree in order to kind of fix that situation once they found out about it. Even though Haman was a wicked man and he issued something that the king did not agree with, that Esther did not agree with, they still had to figure out how to fix this, how to do something about it. So they were in a really bad situation, and the king didn't even know about this decree. But Esther had a problem. The problem was that Esther could not approach the king on her own. That was against Persian law for anyone to approach the king without having been summoned. And the penalty for approaching the king was death. But the king had not summoned her for a really long time. So it wasn't like she was going to see him later for dinner or something. He had not summoned her for a long time. 30 days, in fact. So an entire month she had not seen her husband. And she didn't know how much longer it was going to be before she was able to see her husband again. But Esther was told that anyone who approached the king would be put to death unless the king, when they approached him, extends the golden scepter to them and spares their lives. Well, that's a really hard thing, right? So you got a 50-50 chance. Either you're going to die or the king is going to be happy to see you and receive you in his presence. So Mordecai gets a hold of Esther and he tells her what's going on, because Esther didn't have any idea about this decree. Mordecai knew because people had been informed that there was, that this was going to occur on a particular date. So Esther calls everyone together, and Mordecai, all of her servants in the palace, and Mordecai calls all the Jews together, and they all fast for 3 days. They fast and they appeal to God to help them. And when Esther goes and approaches the king, he extends the scepter and receives her favorably. So God turns the heart of King Ahasuerus toward Esther. So there's a first lesson right there, is that God is the one who turns hearts. God is the one who hardens hearts. We've known that, right? We've known that from Pharaoh, that God would soften Pharaoh's heart to relent, and then he would harden Pharaoh's heart to not let the Israelites go because God wanted to reveal his glory. And he even said that Pharaoh was raised up. So God made Pharaoh for this very purpose, that he might show his power in him and that his name might be proclaimed in all the earth. So there are some people like Pharaoh who are specifically destined for wrath, specifically destined to be wicked so that God can display his glory to the objects of his mercy, those he's chosen to be his children. You wouldn't really know what you've been given if you're not seeing that those who did not choose God, those who do not choose God, are destroyed. When you see that the wicked, that those who reject God and do evil are destroyed, you are going to see, wow, I didn't even deserve to be here because I've been wicked in my own life. And only God has the power to turn hearts, either to be good or bad. And so if I believe that I'm one of the ones, that I'm one of the good ones, one of the ones who've been chosen, I better bear that fruit. I better receive what he's doing. Otherwise, I've just deceived myself and I am destined for that same destruction. So Queen Esther did something really interesting when she approached the king. Anytime that you see her approaching the king in the word, you see that she approaches him in a very specific way. In verse 4 of chapter 5 of the book of Esther, Esther approaches the king, and when he asks her, what is it that you want? She says, if it pleases the king, let the king with Haman come today to the banquet I've prepared for him. So Esther doesn't say, I'd like you to, this is my will. She says, if it pleases you, if this is your will, if this is something you want to do. That's a totally different way of approaching a person than we typically do today, isn't it? We tend to say, can I want, I would like, even may I. But this is a different thing. She has a lot of respect for her husband, for that king. If it pleases the king, let the king together with Haman come today to a banquet I've prepared for him. And then in verse 7, when the king goes to the banquet and he's asking Esther, okay, we're here, like, now what is your petition? It's going to be given to you. And look at the king's heart. Like, God really turned the king's heart to Esther, didn't he? Look at his response. Now, what is your petition? It will be given to you. And what is your request? Even up to half the kingdom it will be granted. That's a lot of favor to have. And those of you who've been doing this, the workshop, and you've been looking at, okay, how is it that a wife needs to respond to her husband, and how does a husband need to respond to his wife? Pay attention. It might be good for you to read the book of Esther. Look at how the husband responds to his wife. What is your petition? It will be given to you. And what is your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be granted. And look at the wife's response. My petition and my request is this: if the king regards me with favor, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and fulfill my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet. I will come tomorrow to the banquet I will prepare for them, and then I will answer the king's question. So we're focusing on how to approach our King of Kings, how to approach our Father, our husband, our God. Look at what Esther says. If the king regards me with favor. So when you're praying, if you start out wanting to know if God regards you with favor, and if you are even in the right standing to make a request, that's a very different heart than we're used to bringing. If the king regards me with favor. So when you are wondering about this and you're saying this to God, not as a checklist, because God hates that. He hates empty words. But if you are really bringing this heart to God and you're asking him, if I've gained your favor, you really have brought your heart there, you're going to pause for a moment and you're going to think, okay, is there any place that he has been dealing with me? Is there anything he's been calling me to address? Am I in his favor? Can I even make this request right now? Or do I need to go take care of some things and then come back? So if the king regards me with favor, so you have to be behaving already in a favorable manner. Your heart already has to be in a favorable place. And if it pleases the king to grant my petition and fulfill my request. So if you think this is a good idea, and if it makes you happy to grant my petition and fulfill my request, look at what Esther cares about. She actually cares about whether her husband is pleased with her, whether they're in a good position between the two of them, whether their relationship is in good standing, and she's in good standing before her husband, and is this something that he would be pleased to do? So what would it be like if you prayed like this? Because this truly is what it means to pray in the name of God. The name that he has made for himself is his will. The will that he is fulfilling, the will that he has already partly fulfilled, and the will that will continue to be fulfilled, that will continue to be revealed. So is this in your will? Is this in your name? That's what we should be concerned about all the time. Who else prayed like this? Matthew 26, verse 39. So here Jesus is praying in the Garden of Gethsemane before he's going to be arrested. And he has just said that his soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. He's incredibly grieved, incredibly sad about what's going on. And now he's going to be arrested, and he knows what's going to happen to him. He knows he's going to be tortured. He knows that he's going to be hung on a cross. And he's praying to the Father. And he says, my Father, if it's possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will. So if it pleases you, if this is what you want to do, if this is what you will to do. And then he went and checked on the disciples, and he came back and he said, my Father, if it's not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done. So Jesus is willing to do whatever it is that his Father requires in order for his will to be done, even to the point of death. Kind of makes our prayers seem a little like, okay, well, I've been asking for a lot of stuff for me. And if that's how you feel, like if it's kind of bringing your prayers into question, then you got to ask the question, how does my heart need to change so that I have a heart like this, where I'm always working for the will of the Father and to serve Jesus, to serve the name of Jesus? Most important place to start is going to be that you wake up every morning and that you ask him to give you your daily bread and ask him, what is your will for me today? What is it that you want me to be, become, do? What is it? How do you want to use me today? Because most of the world wakes up and they have their own ideas of how they want their day to be, what they're going to check off of the list. But when you're in Christ, you've been redeemed. And what that means is that Jesus has purchased you. You were in bondage to the world. You were in bondage to Satan. And now he has purchased your soul. And when you go to the store and you buy something, you get to use that thing however you want, don't you? Well, that's the same with Jesus. It's the same with God. And he says that he is the potter and you are the clay, which means that a potter is making different things, like a bowl or some sort of a tool or an instrument, in order to use that for a particular use. And he's bending and molding that clay so that it becomes what he wants, not what the clay wants. And that's the position that we need to take. And so if you get in the habit of doing that every morning, it's going to shape your own day. Because now you've taken the position that this life is not my own. This life belongs to God. And my heart has to be molded according to the name, according to the will of God. So as you are learning what is required in order to give yourself to God, I encourage you to use this language, use these examples, but don't use them as a template. Don't use them as a checklist of things to say, but rather of who to be, who to become, how to rend your heart as you're praying to God. If it pleases you, if I've won your favor, if this is your will to do, but only if it's your will. And it's also okay to have conversations with God, to take things up with him. I have a situation right now where I'm waiting on promises that God has made to me, and these are promises he's made to me over years, that he's let me know. He's the one who's going to take care of me, and he's had me giving up a lot of things that didn't necessarily make sense, but I gave them up, and they made sense once he ministered to me why it is that those things needed to happen. He was working with my heart. Like when he had me giving away money and I didn't have any money coming in, that'll work on your heart, let me tell you. But in this particular situation, I'm waiting for him to fulfill these things. And so one of the things I'm taking up with him is I'm saying, okay, Father, you told me this in 2019. Then you told me this in 2020. And then this past year, you told me these things, and I waited, and I didn't do anything. And now I'm waiting for you to fulfill. And everybody else is waiting too. They're all fasting and they're all keeping watch to see that you're going to do this thing for the sake of your name, for the sake of the faith of all of us, for the sake of the glory that I know you're going to reveal. Please do this thing. But if I've been wrong, but if this is not your will, and if I'm not truly your servant, if I've been wrong in any way, then please deal with me. Please talk with me, because the only thing that matters is that I'm yours. Even though everything is on the line right now, even though my house, I will lose my house if he doesn't fulfill this. The only thing that matters at the end of the day is whether I'm his or not. And so please reconcile. Deal with me if I've done something wrong, if I've misunderstood you, if I've stepped ahead of you in any way. And he hasn't done that. He has not given me an inkling that I have stepped away. And you know how I know that? Because I do this every single day. Every day, this is the way that I pray with him. Every day, for a long time, this is how I have prayed. This is the relationship I've had with him. And I have asked him every single day, did I do that video right? Did I speak correctly? Have I done what you've asked me to do? Have I been the instrument that you have molded me to be? Are you pleased with me? Have I won your favor? And now I'm asking him, is this what you would like to do? And if it is, then please fulfill. And please fulfill for the sake of your name, for your glory, and so that I can continue to do the work that you've set me apart to do, so that I can continue to serve in this capacity for the next 2 years that I'm going to be here. I hope you'll first of all discern this message with God, and if he convicts you that this is the truth, then I hope that you will implement this way of praying and relating with God so that your heart can be molded according to his will.